So me as a designer, it's less of a job and more of just like, it's what I do to pay the bills, but it's enmeshed in my life. It's as important to me as my relationships with my friends and family. It just so happens that it pays the bills.
What's going on? You're listening to episode 90 of the Perspective Podcast, and I'm your host, Scotty.D.Russell of Perspective Collective. This show is about carving out time to build something for yourself. I want to share what is and isn't working for me, along with sharing my guest point of view. This platform also allows me to cast the spotlight and celebrate those creating big waves in the community through interviews and a weekly dose of inspiration in the outro, so stick around to the end because it could be you. More often than not, you come across forks in the road where you have the option to either settle or push yourself to the next level. Maybe you think you have it all figured out and that good is good enough. Or maybe you know you haven't even scratched the surface of your potential and there's no ceiling to what you can accomplish. You see, we face these forks all the time. At the dinner table, just kidding, like in the gym, at the day job, in relationships, and more specifically, in our creative pursuits. It boils down to, are you a brick or are you a sponge? Since you're listening to this episode, or the podcast in general, you are definitely a sponge. You want to go out there and soak up knowledge and find ways to seek out growth. Bricks, on the other hand, may think they've reached their peak potential and that they already know what's best. This topic was sparked by a deep conversation between my brother Brian Manley and I after slaying our crafting and delivering a Killer Talk workshop at Creative South this past April. And after deep reflection over copious amounts of quality whiskey on the rocks, I knew that Brian had to be on the show. Brian is one of a kind, just like his whiskey. He was the first speaker I ever saw at a conference back in 2015 as he lit up the stage and set a fire under all of our asses. He was one of the key reasons I wanted to become a public speaker. After seeing what he did and how the audience reacted, I was like, damn, I want to figure out how I could be a public speaker as well. Fast forward to 2018, and now we are co-teaching workshops on speaking, but more importantly, he works for himself full-time as a professional branding warlock who crushes under the name Fun with Robots out of ATL. Not only is he an incredible speaker and designer, but he's an amazing friend with a ton of great perspective that any creative could learn a new trick or two from. So today, we inject an enthusiastic dose of energy into topics like full-time freelance and handling clients, the 24-hour rule to be pissed, mad, or sad, the debate between bricks and sponges, pizza, booze, and a ton of other tantalizing and tenacious tangents. You can find the show notes to this episode littered with all of Brian's dope work at perspective-collective.com/90. If you found value in this episode, please consider supporting the show by becoming a pledger at patreon.com/perspectivepodcast. With as little as your weekly cup of coffee, you can help me get this show to the point where it's reaching more people while I'm still able to improve the quality and bring on more help, such as Áine and Paige. What also helps the show grow is by sharing it on social media, subscribing, and leaving a rating review on Apple Podcasts. Sadly, I can only read the US reviews at the moment, but I can see everybody's overall star rating review. So please, if you can at least just leave a star rating review. And, let's get a couple more reviews going on so I can continue to read some fresh ones as we approach the 2-year anniversary here at August 19th. Finally, if you catch some inspiration from the show, create some work and tag me at Perspective Podcast on Instagram. I'll give it a share where I post each week's episode artwork and make sure you get some credit. Let's get into the show. I'm here with my good brother, Brian Manley, Man Hands Manley, a public speaker, TED Talker, designer, illustrator, branding guru out of Atlanta. Brian, what's going on, man? About time we get you on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for finally having me. Only 90 episodes in. That's all right.
Yeah, but I'm maturing and getting fine like wine over time for you to come on and drop knowledge. So
that's good. No, I think it's about time. And I think with you and I hanging out and stuff a bunch the past few years, it's only time. we made this happen. It's about right.
Yeah, and so for those who don't know, you were the first speaker at Creative South my first year there, and I watched you set the stage on fire, and that's what kind of sold me that I wanted to be a speaker. And ever since, you and Jason Craig have kind of taken me under your wings, and now you and me are the ones who are teaching workshops on how to craft and deliver a killer talk. So it's funny how it's all come full circle.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. And like that first year I met you at Creative South, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know much about the community. I just got a call from this guy named Mike through my friend Raji, and that was it. And I just showed up. It was the craziest thing. And then you rolled up to me, and a bunch of people came up afterwards, and it was super encouraging and super uplifting. So that was fun.
It's a high like none other.
Yeah. But you, man, well, we always talk about this, but you got to land it. You can't just like half bring it. You got to full on bring it. And again, that's what you did as well a year later. Was it a year later?
Yeah, I was the next year. I like went up to Mike Jones at the end and I was like, I want to speak for you someday. This place was fucking magical. And yeah, got the call next year.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, and it was, you killed it and it was fun. And again, but you and I, we always sit and talk about and break down other people's talks and stuff. It's like we nerd out on that on a level that's probably unhealthy.
Yeah. So if people don't know who you are, can you give us a brief Wikipedia summary about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Boy, because yeah, I'm not known much by that creative community online because I never really started off there. I kind of got thrown into design by accident. Before I was a designer, I've been doing design for about, 15 years or so. Before that, I was a high school youth pastor for almost a decade, and I did that for a long time. And while I was doing all the youth ministry stuff and the churchy stuff, I was doing design along the way, making flyers for events, working with high school kids. And then somewhere along the way, someone invited me to, or a buddy who owned a record label that I loved called the Militia Group. It was like, hey, can you design some stuff for us? I'm like, wait, you're treating me like a real designer. This is weird. So I just started working with friends and working with people and getting to know people. So honing my skills, sitting on my couch where I lived in Tustin, California, and trying to teach myself Illustrator from lynda.com. I just kind of, I mean, that's how I did it. Like I feel like I had a design eye, and I always liked design. I would sit in, I should be writing papers for like youth minister for theology finals or whatever the heck. But I was in the college library reading like Communication Arts Magazine and How Magazine. And I didn't realize then that was what I was really drawn to. So anyway, that's where I got my start. But then what I've done recently since then is I kind of following my passion and my love of working with the music, like loving music and stuff. I do a lot of band packaging. And you're a big, heavy death metal fan, right? Yeah, here's the thing. I'm a big death metal fan, but the problem is I don't ever get asked to do death metal artwork. So I, for the longest time, got kind of pigeonholed in pop punk and emo, even though quietly I was listening to like Gore Guts on the side while I was making this sad artwork. But your personal work kind of reflects more heavy metal, death metal. Yeah, I think my personal stuff does. I love metal. I love all that weird. I just love the occult and I like dark stuff, which is really, again, weird for a dude who used to be a youth pastor, right? That's funny. But that's where my passion's at. And so followed that. Let's see, moved to Georgia, got a job at an upstart web company here just north of Atlanta. And that was my first official paid gig as a graphic designer, like a salary job. And within 6 months, this company lost all their money. And guess who got kicked to the curb? Me and everybody else in the office. So it was at that moment I was just like, shoot, what do I do? And started my own design thing. I just called friends and said, hey, do you need anything? Or buddies in churches in California would be like, hey, I know you're kind of down on your luck. And again, I feel like this is super weird. It was like before Twitter and social media stuff where you could sad sack it on the internet and just play the sad guy card. So you were doing just straight up like outreach through email and phone. Outreach, yeah, a little bit through that. And just like, also there was just something weird out there where people knew like I can get this guy on the cheap. And then what happened was they connected me to like really pivotal people in Atlanta. At the time, the Atlanta music scene was just kind of this group of friends started kind of, how to say it, like guys who became really influential bands in Metro Atlanta all like were hanging out with me and I was hanging out with them. And it didn't feel like we just were all hanging out at the time, but then they all needed design work because they had albums they were putting out and they didn't want to have their deadbeat cousin do it or whatever the case may be. So I started working with bands, and then I got connected to a mega church here in Atlanta, and that just like lit things up for me where I did good work for one person, and then they were like, hey, where'd you get that shirt? Where'd you get that flyer? And it's like, boom, call this guy Brian, and it boom, 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 boom. It just snowballed that way. So, yeah, that's the long and short of it. It's how I got kind of the thing going. But then lately it's just been I got going in the restaurant field, working for this big restaurant group here in Atlanta called Redbeard Restaurants, and they have some really fun restaurants with Chef Kevin Gillespie, who's on Top Chef, and he's become a good buddy of mine. Back to death metal. When we're having meetings about design and like serious business meetings, we always devolve to like conversations about the new Pig Destroyer album or whatever the case may be. So yeah, it's a little weird, but yeah. So people may not know me because I just hang out at festivals or at conferences or whatever. I've been to Crop and Creative South a handful of times. I hang out but I probably don't have a big social media presence because I don't post a lot of stuff online for some reason.
Yeah, you've thrived off of word of mouth. How long have you been doing full-time freelance?
Full-time freelance probably since 2007. So what's that, 11 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, so about 11 years now, which is crazy. And again, but you have to think about it, man. Like when I was in youth ministry, you don't get into youth ministry and working in churches to make money unless you're one of those scumbag guys who's like the TV preacher dirtbags. But so I just wanted to work with high school kids in Orange County and help these kids out. And so if you could make 40 grand a year, you were super jazzed. You know what I mean? And so the bar for me was set super low. If I could make 42 grand, I was like, what? I can get paid this to do design and like paint pretty pictures. So that's kind of how I see it.
Something that recalls me, it was Charles Anderson who spoke last year. So things aren't always like sunshine and rainbows with the freelance life. You know, you can have shitty clients. I thought that story is pretty powerful.
Well, he ended his talk in like Amir from Forefathers and I were running late. We ran to the top of the balcony. It was hot. And Charles Anderson was just waxing poetic forever and doing sort of a cool portfolio review because it was all like awe-inspiring. But then he got heartfelt and serious. And he just simply said one thing where he goes, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's all life. And he's like, we all strive so hard to try to find that balance of like, hey, I'm going to clock in here, clock out there. And he kind of laid it down for me because I have a hard time when I'm working or if I want to take my family on vacation or something to disconnect and go, all right, I'm going to shut my email off for a week and go to the beach. You just can't because it's all intertwined. It's all interconnected. It's all life. And so when he said that, it kind of unlocked something in me that made me realize, all right, so me as a designer, it's less of a job and more of just like it's what I do to pay the bills, but it's enmeshed in my life. It's as important to me as my relationships with my friends and family. It just so happens that it pays the bills. And there are days where it stinks. And I want to talk to you about that in a little bit because I've got a little bomb I want to drop on, just a little nugget of joy and fun for you. But I think what Charles Anderson said was it just opened me up to this idea that it's not easy being a freelancer, and it's not easy even being an office desk jockey, you know? Like, if you can find a way to find a little bit of joy, a little bit of fun along the way, realize it's part of your life, you're good to go.
Well, didn't you drop a client, too, because of something he said?
Well, oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. So because he said that, he said at the end of it, too, again, he had two nuggets that blew my mind. He said, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's all life. And he also said, stop doing work you hate for people you don't like. I've always been the guy who just takes almost everything that came my way. If you sent me an email and said, hey, can you help me with this? I would do whatever I could to do it because I just thought, hey, man, it's just perpetual motion. A few $100 here, a few $1,000 there. Let's just keep the ball rolling. Because I've always kind of been that quiet, fearful dude of like one day it's just going to dry up. The phone's going to stop ringing. The email's going to stop binging. And so, but I realized there's this one client of mine who was giving me, I would say 70% of my stress, and they were probably paying or covering about 30% of my annual salary. So I kind of you don't want to let go of those clients, right? Because you're like, dude, if they drop and I drop someone else or someone else disappears, like I might just be like going to be a greeter at Walmart, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I want to do when I retire. But I just kind of realized maybe this is a time I have to tell this client I'm time to step away. So I did, and it was like this super liberating experience because I stopped doing the day-to-day on this stuff. But yeah, it was wild because I met with another buddy of mine, a neighbor down the street, like 4 or 5 houses down, is also a designer, ran his own shop for the last probably 20 years. And I had a beer with him after I let go of the client and fired the client. And he said, you know what's going to happen? They're going to call you like in 3 weeks. They're going to have a hard time living without you. And sure enough, they're like, hey, how about we get you to come do a percentage of what you used to do, not the whole thing. And that was kind of challenging to figure out. And so you had to kind of establish new boundaries, establish new, hey, here's how we're going to do things going forward. But when I took the money equation off the table and I focused more on the deep joy or like the stress that it caused me, and my wife telling me stop being such a big asshole all the time, like that was a huge component. And it was like, boom, it just freed things up.
Nice. Yeah, that's crazy. Thinking about firing clients. Like, I don't work on retainers at the moment. Mine's like freelance, but I got the day job. I'm one of those cubicle desk paper pusher guys, you know?
But dude, it took me like almost 8 years before I got someone who had enough workload for me to be on retainer.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that's kind of nuts to traverse that. And then the last few years, a handful of projects have turned into that, where it's just that nice little steady stream. But it's also like there's a long-term relationship, which feels really good. And then you can pick, hopefully when you get to that place, you can pick the people that are healthy and don't suck your soul out through your nose and don't become that 70-30 thing where they're 70% of the pain in the ass that pay you 30% of what you make. Yeah.
And now you're getting more involved in social media per me twisting your arm and other people twisting your arm.
Dude, I'm trying, man. You and the Forefathers dudes all bust my chops on it. But a few weeks ago, I posted some album cover I did. That's like the most metal thing I've done in a while for a buddy's band here in town. Some guys from used to be in the band Norma Jean have this band called Holy Gold. And I did a 7-inch for them, and I posted it. I was super happy, and I posted a few other things I'm working on. But I don't know, man. We got to talk through this. Some guy, I probably should know him. I don't know. He can go rotten hell. But he posted something about, dude, you ripped off so-and-so band. And I immediately went into a tailspin. Like, my wife had, I think, just come home. I just come home with, like, takeout dinner. And I was, like, going to sit down with the family, and we're going to hang out and have dinner. And then she goes, hey, what's this guy's comment about this art? And I said, what are you talking about? And I just look at it and immediately sucked all the fun out of the room, all the air out of the room. And I just got super angry, sad, and pissed all at the same time. And I'm like, see, damn it, Scotty, this is what I get for being vulnerable online and showing stuff. Like, within 3 seconds, some guy's shitting on it. And I guess that's part of the deal. What do you call that? Trolls or haters?
Trolls, man. I've had so many. Like, you get a lot of good compliments and lots of good reviews, but like one negative comment, you know. Did I tell you about the time I got an anonymous email? And like literally the email, someone submitted it through my website, and I hope they're listening to this. But they said, anonymous, your heart's in the right place. We can tell you care, but you're honestly just trying too hard, and I'm not quite sure you're cut out for this. And this was like maybe like 3 months into doing the podcast.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah, dude. That one like haunts me.
Yeah, dude.
It haunts me.
But let me ask you this. Does it motivate you now that you've kind of moved past it? Is it the thing that you go, if you're having a shitty day, you're like, fuck this guy, I'm going to move past this?
It's a blessing and a curse at the same time. Like, I definitely fuel off that shit because, you know, a lot of people don't always wish you well or think you're going to do well, especially in Iowa. Like, people in this area, it's a crab bucket mentality. They like to pull you down. But yeah, at the same time, it does fire you up. But still, like, those ones sting. Like, that one stung for you. You can get 100 nice comments on your next 10 posts, but then you get one negative Nancy.
Yeah, it did not sit well. It took me, and it's like most things, it takes me about 36 hours or 24 hours. I've got a neighbor across the street who's like obsessed about Alabama football and Atlanta Falcons football. And like, he's mentally married to football. And if his team loses, he's not fun to be around or whatever. And he'll tell me, he goes, I got 24 hours to be mad. After 24 hours, you got to let it go.
I like that.
And I took that approach, and then I woke up the next day, and you do feel a bit lighter, and you feel a little bit better, and you go, all right, you know what? Haters gonna hate. We'll do our thing. And but like you said, it kind of haunts you a little bit, and then it makes you a little more fearful to post later or whatever the case may be. But I'm going to try over the next year to start posting more.
You got a show to grow, man. It's a whole new world of clientele that would want to hire you for your heavy metal.
That's what everyone says, and I'm fine. My workload's good enough, but I just want to get posts to my friends, people like you who go, what do you do?
Yeah.
How do you keep lights on at your house? Are you a drug dealer on the side? Like, what's going on?
I smoke rocks.
Part of it, too, is I'm so busy just with work, which is nice, that I don't really have a whole lot of time to post social stuff or update my website, which is wildly out of date.
Everybody that's on the show, their website's out of date.
But the big thing for me is, I think being a freelance hustler, sometimes you I don't know. When you're a rock star, people think all you do is dope stuff. And I'm sure even when you get to rock star status, you might only be able to do dope stuff. But sometimes I get an email that says, I'm going to pay you to design and brand this slime event for middle school kids at a mega church. It's all around the country. I'm not sure I'm super jazzed to post that to my creative friends online. But guess what? It pays the bills. It keeps the house, lights on. And I'm proud of the work. It's just it's not the best.
The work you want to be known for.
Exactly. Yeah. You're pulling some basic stock type the other thing too. I don't know if you deal with this much, but when you're working with clients, they have an idea what they want the project to be, and you have an idea, and you think you have the best idea for them, but then they eventually beat you down with a few revisions, or you make the horrible mistake of giving them 3 options and you throw a bad one in thinking it's just going to, and then they pick the bad one. Yeah.
Yeah. And they pick the shitty one.
I just want to somehow, that's what happens a lot where I'm like, you always wish you could say, this is what I did for this project, this band, this client. But man, you should see the folder of options I sent them and they didn't pick it. But that's also bad business practice because then you're throwing your client under the bus. And so I don't want to do that stuff.
Something I'm really excited to talk about, and you know where this one's going. You and me had like a really good talk. This was like the reason we're on the podcast, because drinking whiskey after crushing a workshop at Creative South, and we just got to sipping and talking, and this concept about you're either a brick or you're a sponge, and it all kind of goes into being a lifelong learner, or you just one to passively exist. Yeah,
I think it's also passive existence, or also like a brick is formed by just kind of getting callous and getting hard and just being tough. But a sponge is kind of like ever float, a little bit more fluid, a little bit more flexible. I see a lot of guys at these design conferences that are really cool dudes, but you look at them and talk to them and they think they have their shit together all the way, as if there's no room to grow. And I always try to do my best not to carry myself in such a way that seems like I've got it figured out. Do I have wisdom? Absolutely. It just comes with time, right? And just doing the work and putting the time in. But there's some dudes that are crusty and hard like a brick. Like they act like they've got it all figured out. Where I think a sponge would be more of someone who doesn't have it all figured out and admits that they don't. I remember there's this grid I saw in college. I wish I had it in front of me. But it says like your consciousness, your unconscious mind or whatever, and then competence and incompetence. And where you kind of want to live is conscious incompetence, where you're aware that you don't know everything. If you're consciously incompetent, like you're aware that you don't know, you're going to be that sponge. You're going to grow. You're going to absorb more. And you're just going to be just a better learner. As where a brick is going to be that person who's unconsciously incompetent. They don't know because they're so brick-like.
It's all about the climb, but not necessarily the destination, because once you reach the destination, you've captured potential.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sponges are climbers.
Sponges are climbers. Sponges, they grab that potential. Also, there's something like you said about the climb. I was listening to a podcast yesterday where John Taffer, that guy who hosts that show Bar Rescue. Have you ever watched that show?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't got cable over here.
Okay, well, I guess I'm rolling deep over here because I got AT&T Uverse. What up?
I got retainer clients up the wazoo.
No, it's not like that. But this dude on a podcast, it was like a music podcast, and they somehow got John Taffer. And one thing he said, they were talking about generational differences. One thing he said that I thought was kind of relatable, the brick sponge thing, is that he thinks the problem, I hate when people go, the problem with young people today. It's like the whole idea of saying millennials, like, it's yucky on the tongue. But he said something about, you think the journey is a 10-year journey. But John Taffer's like, I always knew my journey was a 40, 50 plus year journey to get where I wanted to be. And he said, when you have that long view, that macro wide view, every step of the way feels precious and important, as opposed to you going, I'm going to try to be a doctor and a millionaire by the time I'm 28.
Yeah.
That's not going to set you up. That's not a climber. That's a dude who just wants to build a rocket ship and take it up.
Yeah.
So unless you're Elon Musk, I guess that ain't going to happen.
That's extreme long term. So you're playing the long game, but in order to like reach the long game, you got to play the short game, which is a day by day grind. Small milestone. You can't climb Mount Everest overnight, and you can't eat a full extra large pizza in one bite.
That's right. That's right. Well, I've tried in college, but it didn't happen. I look like I do every day. But no, dude, this brick sponge thing, I've been thinking about it for months since we talked about it. Also I think the sponge is if a person is spongy. I think like you said a second ago, they're curious. I think being curious is so stinking important to being a designer. We have nothing but knowledge at our fingertips with our phones, our computers, our whatever. And it's easy to get caught in one lane, right? Where you're only following the Twitter feeds of people you want to follow. You're only reading the articles you want to read.
Yeah, curating your consumption in a sense.
Yeah. And it's an information bias, too, where you're kind of just going, you're one way down one path. Like, whether you know it or not, you're kind of going down a rut. Case in point, I've recently seeing podcasts and people talking to this guy named Jordan Peterson. He's a philosopher, and I guess I just wanted to learn more about him. And I guess some people think he's alt-right. Some people think he's just a wacko or he's transphobic or whatever the case may be. But I started watching a couple of YouTube videos on him, and then YouTube started curating my channels for me, and all of a sudden it was like
videos you might like.
It was all this alt-right shit, and I was like, fuck, oh my God, if someone comes to my house and turns on my YouTube on my Apple TV, they're gonna be like, this fucking nut is an alt-right Trumper or something. Like, so it's crazy. Like, that's that information bias. We like that, right? So if you watch one video you like, you're gonna watch 40 more like that.
That's how like Instagram's explore feed is now. They'll like curate it for you.
Exactly. But the curiosity thing, I think, is about getting away, and it's what a lot of your perspective collective means is that finding a new perspective and a new way to look at things.
A new angle, exactly.
New angle. Curiosity is that find a new angle. There in photography, I love photography, and I think a lot of the reason I probably don't exist well on social media with like illustrators that are brilliant, like you, and I'm thinking like Nick and Amir and all these different guys that are just cranking dope illustrations, because I think I like to use the camera. I'm not a very good illustrator or drawer. I can do it. I can use the pen tool. I can Bezier curve some shit if I have to. But I like cameras, and so one of the things back in the 60s, and it's been going on for a while. There's a thing called a twin lens reflex. It's a camera that has two lenses, and you have to look down on the camera to focus your shot and to see things. There's this documentary called, Finding Vivian Maier, I think is what it's called. And this girl, I know, you should watch it sometime if you ever have like the 800th documentary you need to watch. But she used a twin lens reflex, which forces you to look down, and thus your camera is about at your belly button, which all of a sudden your perspective on everything changes and actually puts you at like a childlike point of view. And so one of the camera gurus here in town that I loved in Atlanta would always say, get your twin lens reflex out every once in a while just to change your point of view, because it gets you low, it gets you thinking differently. Like when you angle the camera to your left, it's actually moving to the right because it's in a mirror and it's all this weird stuff. That changing your point of view is part of that curiosity, which I love. By the way, being curious, can I tell you a story about being curious that happened to me last week? That
Go for it.
# breaking news, may be exclusive on the podcast, may also get me in trouble from CNN. I don't know. So my neighbor up the street, she works at HLN CNN here in Atlanta, which is headquarters downtown. And on Thursday we had the day off with my daughter, and so we rode the MARTA train downtown and just walked around downtown, just trying to make our kid realize there's more to this world than sitting at home watching cartoons. And we texted our neighbor and said, I won't say her name, but we texted our neighbor and said, hey, because she'll get fired if what kind of user numbers you getting here?
78 million.
There we go. See, yeah, we're in trouble now. But so my neighbor works at CNN, and we texted her and said, can we come say hi to you? And she goes, hey, cool. How about I give you a tour of like backstage HLN CNN, which was really cool. And I'm always asking my neighbor every time a celebrity dies or like Bill Cosby gets caught being a creep or whatever, how hard is that for her? Because she's live television where they have to scramble to get stuff on TV. I'm always asking her questions like, when someone dies, is that ready to go? And she's like, yeah, there's a whole obituary department where they have these packages ready. So like the day Jimmy Carter kicks the bucket, there's a package they have. They just hit play and they can honor Jimmy Carter. The day George Bush dies, boom, they got it, and they update it every year. And so I'm just like, this is fascinating to me. So she goes, hey, do you want to meet the obituary guys? I'm like, sweet. She's like, you're a weirdo. You know that because you ask them all these dumb questions.
Were you dying to meet them?
Dad joke.
Hey.
So she walks me down the hall and goes, hey, this is my weird neighbor, Brian, who never stops asking me questions and has never stopped being curious about how you do your job. And so we're talking, and they said the craziest thing they've had to do in a while is when Anthony Bourdain passed away a few weeks ago, when Anthony Bourdain took his life. They didn't see it coming. They didn't have a package ready, and they built a whole hour-long special in an afternoon. But he said part of the way through editing it was they didn't have they had shown 5 minutes of television live on the air to millions of people. They didn't have the next 5 minutes rendered and ready to go. And they were scrambling, sweating bullets. And he just was telling me the story about how it's the most intense thing he'd ever done. And I'm just enamored by this because, again, it's not my line of work. I get what it means to edit a little bit of video or edit audio. But this idea that you have this crazy pressure on you to edit this obituary package to honor someone who's passed away was super insane to me. And again, I only learned that story. I only got to know that kind of like hidden thing because I was curious. Doesn't affect what I do. Doesn't probably make me a better designer. I just think it expands kind of my curiosity in my brain.
See, and how I think it would apply to listeners, or it's a lot of creatives, trying to turn their hobby to side projects to a side hustle, and get paid for it. But being curious means if you're only analog using Micron fine liners and pencils, switch it up and go on the iPad, which is what I had to do this last year. And it totally expanded my craft. Or take up a brush pen, or take up, charcoal, or some kind of different medium, or create something that's just completely fucking out there that, you would never, it's outside of your wheelhouse. Be curious and chase those different things, those different routes, those different avenues.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get stuck in a rut. It's nice to download a different font family or some weird vector brushes and go, let's learn something new. Because how often, we spend our whole life trying to, we're in school, right? And the minute we get out of school, we're like, fuck yeah, I'm out of school. Never going to learn again. That's the worst way to approach it.
A brick.
Yeah, that's the brick thing, right? I'm out of school. The amount of people, you and I read books quite a bit. The amount of people who I have a horrible time talking to Clark Orr out of Orlando, name drop. And I will reference 14 books I've been reading or have read in the time we're talking. He'll look at me and go, I got it. You read books. I'm like, no, it's not that I read books. Actually, I listen to them while I'm working.
I listen.
I call it reading, though. That's reading, right?
I listen to books.
It's the same thing. Your brain is engaged.
Potatoes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But Clark always busts my chops. He's like, I get it. How many book references are you going to drop today? And it's like, no, dude, I think this would help you. You don't have to physically turn pages. You can get an Audible account, and it's great.
That's the only way I'll read a book these days. Oh,
same here, man.
I got a couple I'll read. I got the Chutzpah Twins' new freelance book. Shout out to them. But, stuff like that I'll consume. Before we go into rapid fire...
Yeah, let's do it.
What's one piece of advice you give to a creative at any stage of life who struggles starting or sticking with it? And you can answer both.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Starting is just got to do it. I've got a buddy right now who wants to start a vlog, and he wants to be Casey Neistat. And he could be, but guess what he does? He talks about what he wants to do. He doesn't do what he wants to do. You got to do it. You just have to take that first step. I think that's the biggest deal. So I played him this old punk rock Gorilla Biscuit song called Let's Start Today. Dude, let's do it. Let's give you a name. I'm going to hold your hand until we start your video blog. You bought the camera. You got the tripod. You got whatever Casey Neistat said to buy. Let's do it. I think the key is you got to do it. And the second key for if you're doing it and you're like, you know what, I'm going to hang it up, is learning and realizing that discouragement it's like a season or it's a couple days. It's not forever. I get beat down a lot where I'll be working on a project with a client and they just go, you know what, man, this ain't working, or this isn't what we wanted, or whatever the case may be. And you realize you're out of some money, you're out of some time, you really wanted the project to click, or you don't get whatever thing you were bidding on. And you get bummed out. But my buddy that loves football, give it a day. Give it 24 hours to be a sad sack, pour an extra ounce of whiskey, do what you got to do, smoke a blunt, just chill out. But yeah, 24 hours to be an asshole about it, right? And be a whiny bitch. Then pick yourself up, keep going. I think that's really important, because guess what? You still have other projects you need to work on, or other dreams you want to accomplish, or other ideas you want to do. Don't let this one horrible thing that set you back a little bit stop you from going, oh yeah, there's all this great stuff over here. Another thing too is like, you forget how, like, if you're bummed out or you're super discouraged, is talking to friends like you or whomever it may be. We don't do that enough until it's too late. And I think we're kind of seeing that now with this horrible rise of suicide and stuff, where people aren't talking through it. They just kind of get going, well, it is what it is, and I'm in this, you're in your own little cocoon. I think there's something really special about getting over that hump by talking to friends and having them tell you, A, it's okay, B, you did screw up, or whatever the case may be, or C, it's going to get better. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, that's great. And if somebody needs a little pick-me-up to talk and share stuff like that, episode 25, You Were Not Alone, You Were Not Invisible. Check that one out, because that's exactly what we talk about, of being able to talk about it. I'm always here, and I'm sure Brian will be there to talk it out too.
Yeah, I'm here.
So, all right.
Hit me up.
Rapid fire.
Let's do it.
If you were on death row, what would your last slice of pizza be?
Does it have to be a flavor, or does it have to be from a place?
It can be whatever you want. This is your world. This is your death row.
Here we go. Check it out. Death row. The murder was the case that they gave me. I'm going to pick a slice of pie from this place here in Decatur, Georgia, called Sapporo di Napoli. They have this slice called the Diavolo Pizza. They bring in this amazing salami, pepperoni that's super spicy. It's amazing. That's it. Diavolo.
You're not going to say Schlitz and Giggles in Baton Rouge?
Schlitz and Giggles, Baton Rouge. That is what you do to soak up bad decisions.
Amir thinks it's called crack pizza or something like that.
It is. I think they do put drugs in the grease. I'm convinced.
It's like not good at all, but it's just there when you're drunk. So
I know we're going to interrupt rapid fire, but the time you were we roomed together for 4 nights or whatever it was, and you were so nice of a roommate that I crashed out early, and you ate a half a pizza in the hallway by yourself.
Yeah.
Sad sacking it.
Sad. I was like hunched over in a chair outside the elevator and just smashing. That's funny. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I like to have a good time. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Where do you seek your inspiration online and offline?
Music. Music inspires me on a million different ways. It's the thing that's speaks to my brain on both an artistic level and also like I don't know, just an emotional level, and also books. I know it's like nerdy to say music and books. I can't say whiskey because that means I have a problem, so I won't say that.
Well, I mean, you usually sip on the finest whiskey. You've converted me to a whiskey drinker for sure.
There we go.
Script serif or sans serif. You're a designer. You're a branding. So
we go sans. For me, sans. That's the dance of the one who brung you.
Okay. What's your favorite typeface?
Futura Bold, I think, is my jam.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I'm going Futura. I love it.
Okay. If you were stranded on an island with only 3 possessions, what would they be?
All right, here we go. 1, I'm going to say a pocket knife. Because you got to hack some shit up. You got to make a spear, make a fishing pole, whatever you got to do. If there's a way, if I can kind of throw this caveat, iPod, not that anyone has them. If someone had an old iPod full of music with a solar panel charger.
I was just gonna say solar panel. You gotta. Is that your third one? Is a solar, or is all one?
I think it's all one. Like there was a case at the very end that had solar panel. Probably take 4 days to charge it in the sun. And then the third thing I'd want is hot sauce to make whatever game, animal, fish, even leafy green that I was eating taste a little bit more palatable.
What's your favorite kind of hot sauce?
Lately it's been Valentina. When I'm eating Mexican food, or if I'm eating breakfast, you got to go all day with Tabasco.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my jam.
Right on. Well, where can people go to find you online?
Yeah, you can go to funwithrobots.com to see a website that hasn't been updated in a couple of years. You can find me on Twitter at Brian Manley or Instagram at Brian Manley. And I believe that's it. If you just look for Brian Manley, I'm not the mayor of police. I'm not the chief of police in Austin, Texas, and I'm not a motocross cyclist. That's pretty much it. I get confused with the mayor of or chief of police of Austin, Texas, and a motocross guy.
Brian Manhands Manley, thank you so much for your time, man.
Scotty Hustle, Russell, Man Muscle, what up?
Oh, God. Did you come up with that one? Or was that Raji?
I came up with that one. I think I gave it to everybody to use. Scotty Hustle, Man muscle. There we go.
Amir always calls me that. So what do you call him? He's a pizza baker or what? I can't remember.
You can't say that. I think that's Swedish for bad terms.
Oh, well, in my world, it's a good thing. So
I agree.
Hey, thanks for being with us and shedding your wisdom today. I look forward to dropping this one on people, and I hope we get a chance to link up again soon, drink a lot of whiskey, craft a killer talk workshop. So let's keep in touch.
All right, absolutely. Talk to you later, buddy.
All right, brother. Peace. There you have it. Brian Manley, everyone. Brian has been a mentor and has been a huge catalyst to any success I've had in public speaking over the years. He's the kind of person I know will rip my speech apart, but he'll also provide me some amazing ideas and feedbacks that help me take it to the next level. So give this dude a warm welcome on Instagram, as he's sitting on a gold mine of killer work he needs to get out into this world. Don't hesitate to hit him up and show him some love if you found value in today's episode. I know I did. Thank you, Brian. Much love to you, brother. I appreciate you. Let's move on to this week's dose of inspiration, and this one goes to Boss Dog. Yep, just like it sounds, boss as in B-O-S-S, dog as D-O-G. So if you're a fan of illustrative skulls, cats, dogs, wizards, bright colors and beams of life, and a ton of other detail, then do not sleep on this dude's work. He's got a one-of-a-kind style, and while it's consistent in terms of aesthetics, you never know what he's going to kick out next. Again, that is Boss Dog on Instagram. Let's talk about the Facebook community. So if you're looking for accountability, a place to share your work, people to collaborate with, give and receive solid feedback, get access to resources that'll elevate your creative game, then I encourage you to check out the Perspective-Collective Facebook group. We have a thriving community building right now, and we would love to have you be a part of it. So regardless if you don't like Facebook, make a fake account, whatever, jump on it and join a community filled with rad, like-minded people such as yourself. And if you're enjoying what you hear and you want to support the growth of the show, I have a few ways you can make that happen. The first, like I mentioned in the intro, is by becoming a backer at patreon.com/perspectivepodcast. Your pledge not only helps support the growth of this show, but I do my best to hook you up with some rewards so it's a win-win. The second way to support the show is for you crypto heads out there. In the show notes for each episode, I'll have addresses for Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoin donations if you prefer to go that route. And finally, you can subscribe and leave a ratings and review over on Apple Podcasts. This week's rating and review is titled Inspiring. It's by Passion Seeker. It's very quick, simple to the point, and all it is you were very inspiring. I'm so glad you started a podcast. So this one was a while ago, but thank you so much to whoever left that Passion Seeker. I appreciate you. And as I wrap things up, I want to give a huge thanks to Áine, Brennan, for making this sound so good all the way from Ireland. Also, big shout out to Paige, Garland, who is helping me out with the show notes and the newsletter. And finally, huge thanks to Nick Jenkins of Blookah for all the dope theme music you hear on this show. You can check him out over at SoundCloud or Instagram, and that's Blookah, Blookah. And as you finish off your week strong, as always, I want to continue to encourage you to keep showing up, keep putting in the work, and keep creating. You got this.